if I didn't, next day, if I didn't have it, I would not get sick. That sort of, but psychologically addicted, definitely. But I always refer to it as I was a good dope shooting man. I mean, I dug it. I always enjoyed. I have not one moment of regret, except for a little liver damage, which I gave to myself.
Do you take drugs anymore?
No, I outgrew it.
No, not even psychedelics?
No, no.
How'd you feel when Janice died? That's
I was expecting
question.
it. I was expecting it.
Because I remember reading an article at the time where some party the Grateful Dead was at, and it just was announced, and they just kept on.
I was expecting it. You can, if when you know dope fiends real well, you can see when they're going to die.
There's nothing you could have done about it or anybody?
No, she was free, white, 21, and rich. What could you have done? To be your brother's keeper, to do something about it, I would have to spend full time with her. And somebody would have to spend full time with her and, been her bodyguard to keep her away from it, and committed her, took her off the road. I mean, one time I looked at Albert, her manager. Albert Grossman was my manager too, and I said, listen, man, do you think did you kill her? I mean, could you have done something about it, man, And he looked at me and he said, listen, she was richer than me. What could I have done? I mean, I couldn't have committed her unless she was willing to go somewhere. And there's a point when you hang around with dope fiends where you realize one of three things will happen: that they will be the type of person that can shoot dope for years and years and will never kill them because they've got it down to an absolute methodology. They never take too much. They know what they're shooting. Like William Burroughs, I must imagine, must have gotten just down to a cold gray science. Or they've become so helter-skelter in their drug habits that they're mixing dope and liquor and downers all together, and they're just trying to stay obliterated. They're people that can't stand normal consciousness. And they will either die, then you have two choices. They will either die or they'll outgrow it all and just put it down. And it won't be hard because they will no longer want to do it. They'll just stop and it will be over. And you can usually tell. You don't know if they're going to die or put it down, but most of them die. And some of them put it down.
How about Jimi Hendrix? Did you know him?
Very well, not very well, but well enough. Yeah, I don't think he was a junkie.
What did you think he died of?
I think he died of puke.
Choke on his vomit.
Yeah.
That was a bad summer.
Very bad summer. Lots more died that weren't that famous. Yeah. Drugs will really kill your ass, man.
That's such a morbid subject.
Isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Why did the Butterfield band break up?
Well, God, when I think about it, it shouldn't have, but Elvin wanted to play more lead, and I wanted to get a band with horns. I mean, I had lots of ideas that were just not a blues band anymore, and so that's why I left it. The band didn't break up. I mean, I just quit. And to do something else, I had other musical ideas.
That's when the electric playing from there. How long did that last?
Drugs broke it up, and I think it was lasted about a couple years.
Didn't you change labels too, or?
Well, they may have after I left, but we were on Columbia.
You were on Columbia with them.
And but Elektra, we were with Butterfield.
Can you tell me something about dealing with record companies? Like, what was it like dealing with Elektra? Who was the head of?
A guy named Jack Holzman. Well, they had been a folk label, and they were really not too prepared for rock and roll. And it was fine dealing with them. I mean, it was great. One day, we realized we had sold a lot of albums, and we said, listen, Jack, we want some money. And we went over there and got $6,000. And though they didn't know how to record us, and they didn't know much about marketing rock and roll, but and then right after that, they got the Doors. They had a guy named Paul Rothschild who worked for them, who knew much more about it. And if they were like not really into understanding where rock and roll was at in the rock and roll audience, Columbia was even worse.
Tell me about Columbia. Do you know Clive Barnes at all?
Clive Davis.
Clive Davis.
Yeah, Clive Barnes is a critic,
yeah.
Drama critic. Yeah, I knew him real well. He was the astutest guy they had in Columbia, and when he got fired recently, it was just because of hubris. He had too much pride, and he had deserved it. I mean, he was smarter than anyone there. He knew more what was happening, and he was saying so, and they canned him. All the charges and everything was
payola was false.
All that's bullshit. I mean, there may have been a little, certainly way less. Columbia is, cleaner than anyone else. I mean, black labels are just filthy with, buying huge cocaine deals and cars and whatnot. Columbia's definitely the cleanest record company that ever walked the face of the earth, and Clive was just the cleanest guy there. But he just had super pride, and he would rub it in people's faces. He would just say, listen, My word, man, I can pick the hits. See, if you can get a machine, a dog, a divining rod, anything that can pick the hits, that's going to be the guy. And he was doing that. He knew who to hire and where to put him and how the markets worked. And no one knew. I mean, they didn't even know how to record loud music. If you cranked up your amp, like English were using, really into Marshall amps. If you did that, you would blow out their speakers. They just did not know how to handle it in any way. Still, they are a fucked up company. They're way too big. There is no one there to succeed Clive, who has the ear, who really does know what's going to sell and where.
Davis really understood music, really liked it.
And more than that, he understood marketing. He understood that you just weren't selling music. He understood you were selling image. He understood what charisma was. He understood that he was McLuhan-esque without even knowing it. He understood the medium was the message, that it wasn't just a song, that you were selling, you were selling atmosphere, you were selling a background for someone to do something to, you were selling a lifestyle to emulate, you were selling peer group identification, all the things that make up charisma and whatnot, and he knew that was the name of the ball game.
Well, in his book, he says the studios were, you say it was a large, not the studio, but the company was a large company, but he said it was fairly small compared to the CBS, the whole McGill, and that people walked around in blue jeans and it's kind of informal. Was it really like informal? I mean, could people just, he said that if a guy came in who signed a contract, he'd be introduced to everybody around, and it was like that.
It was in one building.
So,
yeah, but I had been signed to Columbia, God knows, when I was a teenager, when I was 18 years old, and he wasn't there. If he was there, he was no big guy then. I was signed by John Hammond Sr.
Same guy who did Dylan, isn't it?
Yeah, he signed me and Dylan and a bunch of people.
Is that how you first met Dylan?
Yeah, I know. I met Dylan. Where did I first meet Bob? Oh yeah, his first album had come out, and I bought it, and I thought it was just garbage. And he was playing at a nightclub in Chicago, sometimes after that, called The Bear, and I went down there to cut him, just like I had been doing in black clubs,
Cut him means just breaking in and playing.
Just saying, listen, man, you think you can play, and saying, you fart, sit down, I'm going to show you what playing's all about. And he was such a sweet guy, and he was so charming, and he was so funny. And then when I heard him do his set that night, I realized that he was way more than a player and singer. I mean, he was just a magician. He was hysterically funny. I don't know if he meant to be or not. He was like a chaplain. He
just doing talking blues kind of things.
No, just talking. Just the way his hair. It was like Buster Keaton or something. Just his mind, just the way he walked. And the songs were such tough songs, and you did need a great voice. He did this one song called Red Wing about a boys' prison that was just dynamite. And his talking blues were hilarious indeed. And I realized it was way more than a guy that could finger pick or sing. He was, it was all melded into one thing. And it was just dynamite. And he was very, very nice, and I really dug being with him. Then I saw him again at a party about a year later. Then he phoned me one day out of the blue. I had gotten a bunch of weird phone calls that year. I offered this gig to be the house guitar player on this show called Shindig, and I said, oh, fuck that, I don't want to go to Hollywood and play with those.
It was a TV show.
Yeah, and then he called me, and he said, you want to go play on this record with me? And I didn't even know he was a star, man. I mean, I knew he was, like, popular, but I had no idea till I got there that he was, like, an enormous superstar.
Well, he had not yet recorded any electric stuff?
Yeah, he had done a semi-electric album with the song, she's an artist, she don't look back. Yeah.
Bring It All Back Home.
Yeah, Bring It All Back Home. And Subterranean was on that. And then the second one was the one with what I was on, like a Rolling Stone, which really got him on.
You play on like a Rolling Stone?
Yeah.
Do you get any
no
residuals from them?
No, I'm just a session guy.
If you got a penny for every time that was played, you'd be pretty rich.
Yeah. And then, man, I could just see even then it was just like a super phenomenon, just incredible, a sociological phenomenon almost. And
you mean like his effect on the people around him?
Yeah.
Charisma.
Yeah.
Was he different at all, being such a big shot?
Yeah.
How had he changed?
Well, it's still this is see, idolatry. When you're selling more than music. When you're selling more than music, you're selling idolatry is basically what you're selling. Something to idolize, something to like. Well, I can't think of a better way to put it than idolatry. You are putting up a totem. You are constructing a totem to be idolized, to be dealt with in a way that is sometimes based exactly on the person himself, and sometimes which is deeply separate from the person. And how the person responds to this, because what idolatry does above all is it provides a one-sided bank of conceptions. All the people that buy a record, a Dylan record, or say Dylan, have a concept about Bob Dylan in their mind due to the songs, the voice, the pictures on the cover. And then there's Bob Dylan's concept of Bob Dylan. And they sort of have an edge up on him because he doesn't know them. Like you and I bought Dylan albums and whatnot, and we idolized and developed our concepts, and we had an idea of what Dylan was like. But if he met you, he'd have no idea what you were like. All he would know was that you'd be a step up on him because you'd have some concept of what he was like. So it became very necessary for anyone in that position to develop character armor, because after the millionth time of meeting someone under these conditions where they had preconceptions about you and you had none about them, and you could never deal on a normal basis, because if I wanted to just deal with you as mano a mano, and it was mono and someone else, I would have to develop a character armor, because I would constantly be being assaulted. People would be thinking they knew something about me and asking me about it. And then there was me, who was completely separate from any of this, or, as may be the case, may be the same as what the conception is. Do you understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think so.
Like, some guy might be exactly like he wants you to perceive him as, and whatever you perceive him as might be just like how he is. So if you meet him, even if he doesn't know much about you, what you think about him is pretty much what he is. Then you don't have to really develop character armor, because what you are is what people think you are. And what Bob was sometimes what people thought he was, but oftentimes, millions of people fantasized whatever they was. So he developed a character armor.
What is the character armor?
Character armor is a way to keep yourself private and yet deal with people. Mick Jagger's character armor is like this. Having a chance to watch him alone, just me and him, and then watch him with people he doesn't know. When he's with people he doesn't know, he sort of acts like a transvestite. He just does. He acts like this sort of very tired, old-fashioned, silly way. He acts like an old queen, sort of like Judy Garland. And he really does do this, man, in front of people. And he does it when he performs, too, sort of. And when you get him alone, it's nothing. He's just a normal dude, a bloke, an English rock and roll musician who will talk to you forever about, rock and roll and old blues and whatever. He's your average guy. You get one person in that room that doesn't know him and looks at him as, ooh, Mick Jagger. He will develop this thing that will keep his personality safe. Dylan had a character armor too. It was this sort of studied snottiness. This really, he and his friend named Bobby Newirth had developed this sort of way of talking that was a little language of their own that you really couldn't understand. It was Anthony Scaduto writes about it quite well in this book about Dylan, and it was very sort of hostile and sort of barbed, and it was real good for keeping people away, keeping them at arm's length. Even if you were dealing with them, they would really never know what you were thinking.